Alright, what is up? So, I'm having to do a part 2 of my first video, and I did not want to use my laptop for this very reason because it looks very grainy. So, my apologies, but I just want to get this video done because I've been wanting to talk about this series for a long time, and I just wanted to actually get it done. I'm doing it for fun, but at the same time, I just want to finish it. So I'm going to try to make it, maybe that's a little bit better. But anyway, so I was talking before I got cut off, I was talking about Billy Chenoweth. So anyway, he's played by Jeremy Sisto, and he's the bipolar, manic depressive brother of Brenda. Now Brenda, in the first part of this, I was saying in the first video, I was saying Brenda Chenoweth was played by Joanna Cassidy. Actually, Margaret Chenoweth was played by Joanna Cassidy, and Brenda was played by Rachel Griffiths. She's the Australian actress that I was referring to, not Joanna Cassidy. So, my apologies. I screwed that up a little bit. So, where was I? I really just don't like the way this video looks. I don't know, I just have to roll with it. So, okay, maybe it's not so bad if I just move it a little bit. So, because I have no space on my phone and I keep deleting stuff off of my phone, and then it still says I have no space, so it's getting frustrating. I just don't want to keep messing with it. Anyways, I'm trying to do this very relaxed. I'm not trying to be a perfectionist about it. So, yeah, let's hang out and talk about 6 Feet Under. Okay, so yeah, so it's like you're just here hanging out with me in my room. Although, I wouldn't let you in my bed, but you can sit on the end, like on the foot of the bed. So, anyway. So, okay, so now I'm losing my train of thought. What did I want to say? Oh, because when I was recording, I was like, oh my gosh, I got to talk about this and this and this. Okay, so I'd made that correction. Okay, so it's Rachel Griffiths, who's Brenda. Joanna Cassidy plays Margaret Chenoweth, and she's fantastic. I just love her character. Oh my god, you just have to see it. Like, she is always talking about inappropriate shit, and the way she's just hilarious. So, and I said there's like a huge cast of characters that come on as like side characters, guest appearances, I guess you would say, guest characters. But the reason why I think this show was so amazing and groundbreaking, so many reasons. But so I'm going to go over, so the first season kind of covers, you're introduced to all the characters, and you're getting a glimpse of their lives. I already talked about Claire. She's kind of going through an experimental phase with her drug use, and she's kind of all over the place. Nate, he's, having to come here to deal with this death of his father, and that, all this stuff happens. So the family has to then decide that the will of the father states in it that the funeral home is being left to the mother and the 2 brothers. And then Claire, the daughter, she's going to get like a $25,000 grant, or what do you call that? Like a stipend or something. She's going to get that money, but she has to go to college to get the money. Or she's not going to get it till she's 25. Either when she goes to college or when she's 25, whichever happens first. Something like that. And she gets all pissed because she's like, I don't even know if I want to go to college, And so there's a few episodes dealing with that. And then And then you're dealing with, David's homosexuality in the closet. And then Nate, he's got this relationship with this woman he just had a one night stand with. I mean, it wasn't even a one night stand. He literally had sex with her in a bathroom or a utility room in a airport when he first met her, Totally insane scenario. And she all of a sudden, is like wanting to date him and all this stuff, but she's really got a lot going on. She's a writer and she's had like all this trauma in her childhood, and then you find out that she has some really inappropriate relationship with her brother who is bipolar. I mean, they basically act like they're dating, and it's going to be an ongoing theme throughout the show. I mean, when you talk about groundbreaking, inappropriate stuff, Game of Thrones on another level, because this is like, Game of Thrones with the whole incest thing with Cersei and Jaime. That was one thing, but that was like back in like ancient times, so you can kind of understand that would go on back then. I mean, it's almost like they didn't have the same moral compass. Like, the more we've evolved as a species, I guess, we've learned that, incest is really not... I mean, there are still probably parts of the world that's okay, but for the most part, most people kind of know, like, you shouldn't be intimate with your siblings or family members. So anyway, this is a very inappropriate thing that goes on, and I'm not going to really go in too much into that. I mean, you'll see if you watch it. There's some... It's always alluded to. Because there's been a lot going on with the fact that they've grown up with these psychologists. It's almost like they've been overanalyzed all of their lives, that it's made them, whatever normalcy they felt, it's completely gone out the window because their parents are freaks, basically. So that's the deal with them, the Chenoweths. And then what else was... Okay, so that was the first season. Goes over like... So you're introduced to all those characters. Okay, so I was saying, like, in the first one, so we start meeting, like, Ruth. She's now, a widow. So there is a few episodes with her dealing with grief, obviously. She goes through different phases of grief. She's... she goes through different phases of grief. So there is an episode or two where she's just really sad and she doesn't know how to move on without this husband that she's lived with all this time, and now he's gone, and so there's a lot with that. And so the reason why, and I forget which season it is, but it's so cool to me that this show addressed when someone goes missing, because you'll see. So Nate, so he has a relationship with Brenda, right? And Brenda's got all these issues too. She's got like it says on the, when I just was reading like through the Wikipedia stuff and all that, it says Brenda, she deals with depression. Yeah, she deals with depression, but she's also like, she's kind of psycho. I mean, to be honest, I like her though. I mean, throughout the show, like I said, she becomes more likable. But I mean, she goes through a whole period where she becomes friends with a call girl, and then she's like she is a massage therapist. And so she does like some inappropriate massages and okay, where was I going with that? She's a writer. So it's like she wants to live different things in her life so that she can write about them. So it's almost like she invites a little bit of chaos in her life so that she can write about it. And as a writer, I relate to this, and I think that's why I like her a little bit. But I also don't like her a lot. But anyway, so there's an episode, I think it's like Nate, it's early on, I think. Okay, so Nate goes, there's somebody that passes away, and okay, so go back, Caroline, go back and rewind. So he, let me get my thoughts. He's reluctant to do his part as far as working in the funeral home. He doesn't want to do it So he's basically, I think it's like 2 or 3 episodes in, he's like, I'm just going to sell our portion. And there's a little storyline that tries to come in. It's kind of like thrown in there. It's not really the best storyline, but HBO at the time, I forget what's the other one that was about like Mormons or something, and they were trying to have like a corporate aspect to it, where like the corporate people were trying to come in and shut things down or something. But anyway, that's kind of, they've got an aspect of that going on here, where it's like they have a corporate entity that's trying to come in and buy their family funeral home. And, as the audience, we're like, no, the family has to keep this funeral home. It's part of, their tradition, and, it's their family name. And so there's like an entity that wants to come in and like commercialize their funeral home, and, make all the caskets like a certain brand. And basically they're taking all the character out of it and trying to turn it into a commercialized thing, basically, like, take all the family dynamic out of it, since the father has passed away. And Ruth, she doesn't know anything about the funeral business, basically, and she's just like, fine, we can sell it, I don't care anymore. And the only one that's like, no, is David, because he's the one that's put all his blood, sweat, and tears into this funeral home, along with the father. And so there's an aspect of that where they're kind of thinking about, well, maybe we'll sell the funeral home. So there's a few episodes like that. And then, but, ultimately it turns out where Nate finally gives in, and he's like, okay, if I'm going to do this thing, I'm just going to go all out. I'm going to go ahead and get my funeral director license. So he goes to like the funeral directing school or whatever. He goes to get his license. And at first David's like, what the hell? Like, this is not for you. Like, just go ahead and admit it. You don't have to do it. So basically he doesn't want him to do that. I don't know, you can see the sibling rivalry come up, and he's like, no, this is my thing. I've always been doing this. Like, you might as well just go back to Seattle. It's fine. And Nate's like, no, I'm going to go ahead and be there for my family. So it's like a part of guilt comes in, I guess, and makes Nate feel like he has to sort of do this to carry on his father's legacy, basically, as far as, taking care of this funeral home and the home itself, And so he goes and does that. And then, so there's an episode where someone passes away, and they have to, something happens, like they can't transport the body. They can't, where is it? Is it Seattle? Oh, someone passes away in Seattle, and normally they would fly the body, but for some reason, it's not like a kooky reason, like the family doesn't want the body in a plane, so they like are making them go pick up the body. So he has to like drive a truck and go pick the body up in Seattle. He's like, I'll do it because, I can go visit some of my friends there, and, it'll be fine. So I think Claire, she's wanting to be closer to him because they've had a strained relationship. She's the younger sibling, and they haven't really had a relationship because when she was, her memory of him is just him, going off and leaving the family. So they kind of want to reconnect. So she offers to go with them. They go, and he runs into his friend Lisa, this girl who it used to be a roommate, a friend with benefits type thing. So they hook up, and it's kind of one of those things where you're like, oh, they hooked up, and Claire's figuring out some things about her brother that she never knew, like, oh, he has this chick that he was seeing, but he's got Brenda at home, so he's still with Brenda, but he goes and sees this chick Lisa, and he just thinks nothing of it because he's just like, well, she's an old friend of mine, and it's his old apartment, and he's kind of feeling very free and at home there. And before he left, there was a lot of stress, I think, with Brenda because she's very intense, and she's probably a Scorpio. Whereas Lisa's probably like a Capricorn or a Taurus, or I don't know. I can't really get a gauge on her. I gotta think about that one a little bit more. She's probably an Earth sign, but maybe a Libra. I don't know, but she could be a Libra, but because she's very earthy and she's into the whole holistic stuff too. That's why I said Earth sign. But there are different aspects of her that don't make her seem too much like an earth sign. But anyway, I digress again. It's fun for me to think about stuff like that. That's how much these characters are a part of me, because I really feel like I could figure out what their zodiac signs are. I don't know about Nate or David. I really think David is probably a Virgo, like his mom. But I don't know. I'm going to have to think about that a little bit more, and I think I'm going to just maybe do a follow-up video where I go over all what I think all their zodiac signs are. But so, yeah, what would Nate be? Brenda's hands down gotta be a Scorpio. But anyway, yeah, I like to sit there and think about stuff like that. So now I'm on a whole different track with my mind. But so he's dealing with all this stuff. Yeah, Brenda, she's really intense. So he feels comfortable with Lisa. It's a little bit more of a easygoing, simple relationship where they just lived together before and they used to sleep together every once in a while, but they were more so just friends. Like, he wasn't going to be serious with her. It was more like, you know, sometimes they get drunk and sleep together. Let's face it, we've all had friends like that. Don't lie, you have. You, whoever's watching this, you have. But so it's kind of, you know, interesting to see, you know, him and hanging out with this girl Lisa and his little sisters there, because she's like, oh, you know, Lisa's pretty cool because she's very hippie-ish and just kind of like free, and she's telling Claire stories about Nate that she didn't know about her brother. So, you know, it's kind of cool. So he leaves this little, what do you call that, tryst or whatever with Lisa. It's very downplayed, you know, you barely, they don't show any intimacy or anything like that. It's just implied that they, you know, have slept together. And he leaves with Claire and they go back to California. But on their way back, they stop and get some food. And he all of a sudden says he doesn't feel good. And he's like, I think he starts stuttering or something. And he, you know, gets out of the truck and throws up. And Claire's like, are you okay? You know, and I mean, like, there's nothing leading up to this. This happens out of nowhere. He's not drinking or, you know, anything. And he's like, just, you know, give me a minute. And she gets in the driver's seat and drives, and they start talking, and he's okay. Like, they, you know, but goes and he's like, oh, I gotta go see a doctor. So he goes to the doctor, and the doctor says he has some kind of, they say that the name of it's like MDA or something. So it's some kind of like slow brain bleed or something, or is it cancer? I think it's a kind of cancer. I'm really bad with this kind of stuff, you guys. I don't know. I think it's a kind of cancer. But anyway, it's making him have these episodes. It's not epilepsy, but he has like these episodes where he like, and I think it's only happened one other time, but this is like the time when it's happened with someone there, and luckily Claire was there to, you know, help him. But I think after he goes to the doctor's just basically like, oh, we'll just keep an eye on it and we'll put you on this medication or whatever, and, you know, we'll just follow it. Something like that. I think it's downplayed initially. But he starts freaking out and realizing that he really could die from this, you know, because it could be quite serious. And he doesn't tell anyone, so he's got this secret with his health. And the only one that knows is Claire. So that's where we get a first glimpse of this thing that's plaguing him. So everybody has their little secrets. Like, David is in the closet Nate has this mysterious illness, and Claire is basically going through different things. She gets involved with this guy, and different things go on. Like, he is really experimenting with drugs, and then there was a drug, I don't know, someone will probably know if someone watches this and sees what I'm talking about. It's like embalming fluid. It's not, is it K2? I don't know. Anyway, it's a drug that uses embalming fluid, and so basically he was dating her so that he could get the embalming fluid. Like, he was stealing it. So she's dealing with, a creep like that. Like, he's a jerk. And so she's got, like, kind of a toxic thing going on with him. And then Ruth is, like, she's all over the place because she's trying to find herself. And, we go through a whole lot with her with, like, dating. And she's got different things going on. She has different boyfriends throughout the show. And then she's really trying to find herself. She goes to this, like, so people, if anybody knows, there's this thing called EST. It used to be called EST. My therapist used to tell me about it all the time. It's like a spiritual, enlightening workshop. There was another name for it because he used to always try to get me to go to it. And my friend actually, one of my best friends actually went through it, went to this program. But she goes to that, because she's trying to empower herself, because she realizes that she's really passive aggressive and she's really mousy and she doesn't stick up for herself and she's not getting the things she wants in life. She's not getting respect. She's not happy, so she goes to this workshop and all this. So this is all like different seasons. I'm just kind of lumping them all together. But, okay, so back to Nate. So Nate and Brenda are together, and he ends up going to the grocery store one day, and he runs into Lisa. And he's like, Lisa? And she's like, hey, whatever. And he's like, what are you doing here, And he's thinking she lives in Seattle. And she's like, oh, I have a job, I work for... So she's supposed to work for some PR lady or something. It's California, so, and I think this is played by the actress that I love from Schitt's Creek. Beetlejuice. You know who I'm talking about. Anyway, she's awesome. She's so good in this role, too. She's such a bitch. And she's like a complete psychotic bitch lady, but she's awesome at it. So Lisa is working for her, and she explains to him, yeah, I'm living here now, and, I work for her. And he's like, oh, that's great. It's going to be so awesome to have you, nearby. And she's like, yeah. And she's like, oh, yeah. And then she turns to him, and she's like, by the way, I'm like 7 months pregnant. And he's like, oh, congratulations. I'm so happy for you. She's like, yeah, well, it's yours. But I don't expect anything from you. I just thought I should let you know. And he's just like, what the fuck? And, as the audience, we're all like, what? Oh my God, Brenda is going to shit a brick, right? Because she's already psycho. Brenda's already, like, nuts. So, and I don't remember what's going on with Brenda at this time, because we see all different stuff with her, too. Like, she goes through, not only is she a massage therapist, but she's a, what do you call that, nymphomaniac. But Nate doesn't know that. So she has her secrets too. Everybody has their secrets. He doesn't know she's a nymphomaniac. And basically she's promiscuous and already unfaithful to him. But as far as he knows, she's loyal. He doesn't know. But we, the viewer, know. And so it's just like, oh my God, this is so crazy. So now he's going to have to, tell Brenda, oh, this chick has this baby and all this stuff. So I forget. Oh, this is why I got to watch the show again, so I can really talk about it. I forget how he tells her. I forget how he tells her. Oh my God. How can I forget that? Well, anyway, so you can already imagine. This is a whole another aspect of the show. But it's so cool because this is what happens. So Lisa, if you thought Brenda's kind of a wacky, annoying character, Lisa's very annoying. And she's played by this chick that plays her is in a lot of different like movies, but she's always like a side character or like you'll recognize her. She was in the one movie I always remember she was in is Say Anything because I'm, 80s is my time. She was in the movie Say Anything as like the friend of Ione Skye, who's the main girl. Anyway, but she's annoying. She's an annoying character. And so she kind of just says, I don't expect anything from you. But meanwhile, you're thinking, especially now that I look back and watch this show, and it's kind of weird because I got to tell you, I haven't been in Brenda's shoes, but I've been in Lisa's shoes. Like, to be honest, like, my son, I had like a kind of tryst, a love affair, a passionate affair, and that's kind of how my son came about. And I remember telling his dad, well, I'm gonna have him, and you don't really have to be involved, but I am gonna have the baby. So I can see Lisa, but it's looking back at it, it's like kind of annoying, and you can think of it from a woman's point of view and from a guy's point of view, you just think about it relating to your own life, and it's like, oh, she's expecting him to be involved because she's living in the same state as him. I'm pretty sure she had ulterior motives by taking this job in California when she lived in Seattle, and now all of a sudden she's pregnant and it's Nate's baby and all this. So anyway, plot twist. Let's just put it like that. It's a plot twist. So now he's got a baby on the way with a woman that he really wasn't wanting to be serious with, but now he's going to have to, deal with it. So I think, from what I remember, Brenda's kind of like, of course she's pissed, and they end up breaking up. They definitely end up breaking up, but like their breakup, I think they were engaged. That's what it was. Okay, they're engaged. And they're engaged. Because I really remember this episode. They were engaged, and he was going to tell her about the baby, but he ends up finding out through her writing that she's been cheating because she ended up having sex with one of the neighbors. Like, she smokes weed. Like, they all kind of smoke weed throughout the show. Not a lot, but little J's here and there or whatever. And she gets weed from the neighbor and has sex with him and writes about it. And he puts two and two together and realizes that she's had sex with the neighbor. And then he goes through and actually sees her book is like basically stories that she's telling, because he's read her stories before, and he's like, where do you come up with this stuff? This stuff is crazy that you're writing. And she's like, oh, it's, I don't know, I just have active imagination. But the whole time she's actually telling real true stories of what's going on in her life through her writing, but not saying this happened to me. She's basically creating characters, but the characters are actually her, and these are things that she's done or is doing. So, the whole relationship with the call girl, and she goes and has different interactions with men she's doing massage on and different things. So this neighbor happens to be this young kid who's like Claire's age or something, and she's, ends up having sex with him and all this stuff. So he puts two and two together, and he's like, you know what? you and I are done. This is done. I'm not marrying you. You're a complete slut. He calls her every name in the book. He throws her ring, his ring out, and just leaves the house. So that happens. And then eventually, I think it starts the next season. The season after that, it opens with him and Lisa, and they're together. And they have a baby. The baby's like here. And my friend and I, I wish my friend could do this video with me, because she could put some of her own little ad libs to this, but it would be so funny. Because she and I, when we would watch it, we would critique it and be like, oh my god, that season's so annoying, because all you see is Nate walking around with a baby and a diaper bag everywhere. Like in every scene, he's got a diaper bag. Like they're trying to really put that thought in your head that he's this great dad and he's got the diaper bag and he's doing the dad thing and he's all in, So anyway, him and Lisa are together. And they have the baby, and they're trying to make the best of it. And of course, they go through like what a natural mother she is, and she's breastfeeding, and she's vegetarian, and they're living this little life. And we see that Nate is slowly losing his mojo, basically. Like he's just dwindling away. Like the Nate of seasons past is gone. Like seasons past, he was kind of wild. He was kind of matching Brenda's like zest for life, because even though Brenda's all screwed up and everything, like they actually had a passionate sex life, and they did things, and you just could sense that they were kind of working as a couple. Well, then when he's forced to like do this parenting family thing with Lisa, it's kind of like his heart's not really in it. And you can tell that. You can sense it. And so he's kind of just going through the motions. He's like, well, I have a baby with her. Might as well try to make the best of it. And, Ruth is involved too, because at one point they have to come live with Ruth. Well, first of all, Lisa is working for this PR lady still. And I think it's really... I think that they loved the actress so much that they wanted to keep her on the show. So they just kept including her, and, it made Lisa live with her because she was so awesome, and they just wanted to keep her on the show. So Lisa's living with her, and, they have their own little space, but she can't stand that Nate is there. She's like, and the baby, like she gets annoyed with the baby and the whole thing. So she's telling Lisa to like do different like crazy things. I mean, you've got to watch it, because I can't even do it justice. It's funny and brilliant. So, okay, so where was I going with that? Well, because, Nate and the baby and Lisa, they all live there. So eventually the woman's like fed up, Lisa's boss, and Lisa's like, so money is a thing, because they're living there to save money, and Lisa's actually making pretty good money, and so they can get their own place eventually. But Nate, he's doing the whole funeral home thing, and he's not really making a lot of money because it's a family thing and all this, and so that's an issue. So, and they end up like Lisa ends up freaking out one day and like quits. She's like, fuck, this is done. I quit. This woman's driving me nuts. And so they have to go live with Ruth. And when you'll see, when the Fishers, their house, they have like a guest house. And it used to be that Claire lived there, but I think Claire moves back into the house. There's a lot of going back and forth between Claire living in the guest house and then Nate. And then actually, I think at some point, David was actually in the guest house. They take their turns. But, yeah, that's funny. I don't know if David... Oh, David moved in with Keith. That's what it is. Okay, so I haven't even talked about David, but he moves in with Keith at some point, which is his boyfriend, and I think that's where he is. And then, so Claire has a room in the house, and so she's there, and then Nate, when Lisa quits her job, they have to come and live in the guest house. So they go and live in the guest house, and then Ruth is all happy because she can have the baby around all the time, and then Ruth is all happy because she can have the baby around all the time, and whatever. So but Nate's pissed because he doesn't want to live there, and he's unhappy basically, so he'd be pissed no matter what. And he's just realizing that he's living this domesticated life that he didn't really ask for or really want at this point in his life. I think he's supposed to be like in his 30s at this point. But the reason why I love it is there's a lot of kind of like mystical dreaming and stuff he's doing. Like he has these little dreams and stuff of the afterlife and his father. Like you'll see like some of the episodes, like they see the father out, and sometimes the people who are dead will actually talk to them when they're in the funeral home and stuff. There's a lot of like ghostly mystical things going on. It's not presented as ghosts, but there's a lot of mysticism involved, and different spiritual little tidbits that come up in these different episodes. So I'm leaving a lot of that out. I'm telling just the basics of, to give you an idea. But so he has this whole dynamic going on in his head, like where he's trying to figure out life. Like, what is this life all about? Why did my dad die? And why am I living this life now? And, what is going on with my love life? I thought I was in love with Brenda, and I really don't know. I think I love Lisa, but I don't. It's like boring, and I thought my life I'd be doing different things with my life. I'm not really happy being a funeral director. And so he's just really is trying to find himself. And that's why it's so good too, because it's like we've all been there. It's like, I thought I was going to be some like great person in life, and I'm actually just an average Joe or an average Joanna, but I mean, we've all been there. So he's really just trying to figure out like, what is this life? And of course you can understand if you work in a funeral home and you see death all the time, it would be forefront on your mind, because it's like you see people pass away all the time. You see them, you see their loved ones, mourning them, and you're just kind of wondering, what does all of this mean? And there's actually a really cool episode. I always picture this episode too, because it's like it's so wacky. It's like his father, and his father's like in a room with what's supposed to be God, and God is like a big black woman, and the devil, and it's like a little Weasley white guy, and they're playing poker or something, and the father's like, yeah, come on in, and he's like, what the hell? And at one point the white guy gets on top of the black woman, and like they start making out, and like they're having sex or something. It's like, it's so weird. I mean, yeah, I know it sounds crazy, but anyway, so he has these little psychedelic moments where he, he's high or something, and he has all these weird things happen. I can't do those scenes justice, because it's just, I can't explain them. But there's so many good episodes. Oh my gosh. Anyway, so, and like he has a dream where he's like following the dog, and the dog like is telling him where to go, and he's in a graveyard and all this stuff. So I'm getting ahead of myself. So this is why this show was like groundbreaking and so good. It's all of these things put together. So he's dealing with this whole thing with Lisa, and he's got the baby and everything. Maya, I think is her name, the baby. And Lisa's like this phenomenal mom. Like she's really trying hard to be like mom of the universe, and she's doing everything perfectly right, trying to. And he's trying his best too, but he's kind of not really feeling this whole like regular life, domesticated, whatever. So Brenda starts coming around, because she's been dealing with different guys, and actually she goes and she gets help for like nymphomaniac, being a nymphomaniac and all this stuff. She's trying to find herself too and trying to better her life. And she her dad passes away, I think is what it is. Her dad passes away, and Nate, I think, misses her and, still wants to see her. He's missing her because he's with Lisa, but it's like boring and whatever. So Brenda calls him and, my dad passes away. So he goes and spends time with Brenda. But I don't remember if they end up sleeping together or not. Anyway, you can tell they still want to be with each other. They're still attracted. And I think I missed some stuff because there was a point where Brenda and Nate were supposed to get married. Okay, I can't remember I can't remember. I think that's after. Okay, so if you're still with me, you're awesome. Because my train of thought goes all over the place. So, yeah, so Brenda and Nate, they hang out. Well, Lisa pays their bills, and she goes through their bills and finds out that Nate has had dinner with Brenda or something. I don't know. She's a woman detective like we all are, and she puts two and two together. My hair looks freaking crazy right now. And and she's just like, okay, so were you going to ever tell me that you were hanging out with your ex-girlfriend? And he's like, oh, her dad, her dad passed away, and I, just was trying to spend time with her and make her, I had to be there for her, something like that. And so anyway, so they fight, and you can sense that I think there's a point where Lisa's like, I don't think you really, your heart's not in this. You really don't want to be with me. Because, let's face it, women, we have intuition. We have intuition. We can choose to listen to it or ignore it. A lot of times we ignore it because we just want to believe what we want to believe, and we want to be, ignorance is bliss, right? Sometimes we do that to our own detriment. So she looks past the red flags at first, and then at some point she can't dismiss it anymore, and she's like, I don't think you really want to be with me anymore, and I think you need to just tell me if you want to go. I can take it, like I can, we can be apart and raise Maya, and it'll all be fine. And he's like trying to be the good guy, trying to be the hero. No, I do want to be with you. It's just, sometimes, things are frustrating, whatever. He gives a bullshit ass, response. And they end up like really being awkward. And then they go to this like art exhibit. Oh yeah, that's the thing. Claire's in like art school, and she's doing like all this art and this photography and all this, and she's got this boyfriend named Russell, and at some point she has an abortion, and Russell's like, turns out Russell's gay or bisexual, and then he's having sex with the teacher, and the teacher's gay. There's this whole thing going on, another whole dynamic with Claire. So Claire ends up having an abortion, and she has to get Brenda to help her through that. And even though Brenda is not with Nate anymore, she's trying to be a good ex-girlfriend and still get the inside scoop about Nate. And so, oh yeah, so that's how Brenda comes back into the picture a little bit. So she helps Claire through this abortion. And, now we look at abortions on TV as like, oh, they're having an abortion, whatever. But back then, it was still kind of controversial that a main character would have an abortion like that, and they would be just, Anyway, so she helps Claire. Claire didn't have anybody else to call. She didn't want to, I think David was busy, and she didn't want to tell Nate something, I don't know. But anyway, so Brenda takes care of her, and she kind of nurses her back to health. And so they kind of bond. And so she's having an art exhibit, And Brenda's brother Billy is also at this art school, and he's an artist also, and he's got an exhibit there. And this is one of the things that is so brilliant about this show. So all the characters on the show end up at this art exhibit at the same time. So you've got, all the Fishers and all of the stuff they've got going on, David and his boyfriend, and Nate and Lisa, and Brenda ends up being there to see Billy, and there's like a pyramid that somebody builds, like a little pyramid, and it's like lit up, and you can just go in there and sit, and it's kind of cool. It's one of the episodes that sticks out in my mind. So they all, take turns going into this little pyramid, and they're like, I don't know what it is about this little pyramid. It just feels so safe in here and like sacred or something. And at some point, Nate and Lisa go in there, and it's really touching. Just like all of the funny moments and the dramatic stuff, there's some really, really touching scenes in this show that's really hard to put into words. But this is one of them. It's like they go in there, and they've got all this tension because they had just fought about him having gone out to eat with Brenda, and she's had this whole discussion with him, like, you don't want to be with me, and you don't really love me, and all this. And so there's all this tension. She doesn't feel attractive. Like, you can tell. She was like looking in the mirror earlier that night, and she's like, she's just feeling insecure about them, about herself, all of this. So they go in, and they're sitting under this pyramid, and she's like, I don't know what's going to happen with us, but I just feel like maybe we don't have to figure it all out. Like, maybe we don't have to know whether we should be together or we shouldn't be together. Like, maybe we should just try to be whatever we can be in this moment. Basically something like that. Like, not try to make sense of it, just not trying to figure everything out, just enjoy the moments. And she basically says, like, we can just start from scratch, like, trying to be friends, friendly, whatever. So he's like, yeah, and they basically have a meeting of the minds where they're just like, yeah, let's stop trying to be so serious about our relationship and trying to figure all our relationship issues out, and just be really easy with things. And they have a meeting of the minds, and it's just beautiful because they just are like, yeah, they both agree that this is the best way to handle this. And you just get a sense of they're okay with everything in that moment. And then who comes into the little pyramid thing but Brenda, of course. She's there too because she's seeing Billy's exhibit, her brother. And she comes in and says like, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't know anybody was in here. And Lisa's like, no, it's okay, fine, come on in. And I forgot to say that there's a point where Lisa becomes obsessed with Brenda. Not obsessed, but she just really has to know about her because she knows Nate is still in love with her. And she makes an appointment anonymously with Brenda to have a massage. But Brenda doesn't know what she looks like and doesn't know, like, she uses a fake name. And so she just gets a sense of who Brenda is and doesn't tell Nate anything about it or anything. So when Brenda is introduced to her on that night, Brenda looks at her like, I saw you before, but Lisa like plays it off and like basically says to her like with her eyes like, oh no, you're not supposed to know that. So there's like this underlying thing like where Brenda knows that she wanted to know about her, but like Nate knows nothing about it. So anyways, this like unsaid thing between two women. You know what I mean? Women always do this, but now we have social media, so we can just look at their social media and get a feel. But this was before social media, so you had to be a little bit more creative to find out about the other woman. So anyway, she's already seen her. She knows what she looks like. She knows what she's like. She had a whole conversation with her, and but anyway, so she's actually had an intimate encounter with her because this is a massage therapist, so she has to actually touch her, and so you can imagine how awkward that was. But that happened, like a few episodes back. So anyway, back to this little pyramid thing. So Brenda comes in, and they're like, Lisa's like, no, it's fine, come on in. So that whole like tenseness and everything is gone because this pyramid is like a safe space basically. And I love how the director or, writing was done to make it that way, because it's like all of a sudden that awkwardness and the tenseness was gone, and they're just all three adults, three people in there just being raw and honest. And they kind of make peace with everything. And so, they just have a regular discussion. Nothing serious, like, oh, I know you were seeing her, whatever, whatever. It's just like, okay, it is what it is, If you still love her, she's your ex, I'm your new woman, we're going to try to work things out or we won't. It's just kind of like, it is what it is. And it kind of ends there. And then, so that happens. And then I think it's the next season, Nate wakes up. He has this crazy weird dream where he's like in bed with his mom, basically. So it's a very Freudian thing, because he's like, basically Lisa's turning into his mom because she's like too motherly. Like now, all men go through this. I think it's called Oedipus complex. Women and men go through this. Like women with their dads, men with their moms. And if you study psychology, you'll know what I'm talking about. I'm not going to go into that too much, but Freud used to say, like, boys secretly want to be with their mom, and girls secretly want to be with their dad. I mean, that's the easiest way to say it. Agree or disagree, but that's what his theory was. So he has like a subconscious thing going on where he's like, she's turning into his mom. She's too motherly. They have a baby together. Like all the sexiness of a woman kind of disappears when you have a baby with them. Sometimes it can happen. And you can usually work your way out of it, but sometimes you can never see that woman the same again. It just all depends. But his whatever sexuality he had with Lisa is kind of gone out the window, and it's a very domesticated, plain relationship. Whereas he had this hot, fiery, passionate love affair with Brenda. With Lisa, it's more, we have a baby together. Let's raise her together. There's not like any of this fieriness like you have with Brenda. So he's thinking more and more, this isn't good because I'm thinking of her like she's my mom, and it's just not a turn on at all. So he's a dream that he's basically sleeping with his mom, and he wakes up and he's like, oh my God, I gotta deal with this. He wakes up and he's looking for Lisa. He's like, Lisa? Oh, wait. Rewind. Once again, I'm leaving a major part out. So Lisa is okay, so Lisa has a trip planned to go visit her sister, and then what is it, a book convention? Some kind of convention she's going to, or something, I don't know. And she plans on going to visit her sister too while she's at this convention, and I forget, it's some part of California, like I think she's going down to San Diego or something, maybe, I don't know. It's another part of California, but like she has to travel, she has to drive. So Nate's gonna watch the baby and everything, and she ends up, I forget. So yeah, she goes on this trip, and she calls him and tells him that she's going to call him when she gets to her sister's or something. I don't know. Anyway, so she leaves. Now, while she's gone, Nate does see Brenda again. And I forget. Yeah. Brenda ends up just stopping by or something. And they hang out, and I think he tells her that it's not a good idea if she stays or something like that. I don't know if they sleep together or what. I really can't remember that part. But basically Lisa's gone, and it's like he can do whatever because he won't know, and Brenda at this point knows that he's willing to cheat on her. I mean, I'm pretty sure. But not much is done about that. Anyway, she's gone, blah, blah, blah. And then, I forget, one night he wakes up, and like I said, he's thinking he's in bed with his mom, and he's looking for Lisa. And he realizes that she hasn't called. And he's like, okay, well, where's Lisa? And, like, he waits, and then he's like, then he calls his mom, and he's like, Mom, I haven't heard from Lisa, blah, blah, blah. And she's like, oh, she's probably, hanging out with her sister. So he calls the sister, and the sister's like, no, she's not here. And he's like, what? And they're like, oh my God, Lisa's missing. So there's this whole thing of Lisa being missing. And when I tell you, it's so perfectly written, this show, because you're just thinking it's like every other show. Like, oh, a character goes missing, something, something. But they go into, like, the details of someone being missing. Like, the grief, the unknown. Like, he goes crazy, starts making flyers, and has this obsession with, oh my God, I don't know where she is. She's missing. The baby's crying and wants her mom. I mean, she breastfeeds, so it's like all this stuff. And it's horrifying. I mean, really. But they keep showing, like, the area where she was supposed to be and all this stuff. So I think he gets Claire to go with him to go look for her. Now, Claire is dealing with her own shit at this point because I forget what the freaking guy's name was. The guy was talking about that had the drug problem. She had a toxic relationship with him, and he ends up, like, coming back into her life because his brother dies, and that's a really sad episode. The little boy, he ends up playing with a gun and getting shot or something. He was like 6 or 7 years old, 8, I don't know. It's a really horrible episode. But so his brother passed away, so he kind of goes off the deep end, and he needs her, and she's like every empath type girlfriend, thinks that she can nurse him back to health. Well, he goes on like a suicide watch or something like that. She thinks he's committed suicide. He like disappears too, so he's missing too. But it's like more like he's probably committed suicide. Like, she doesn't know where he is. So to take her mind off of that, she goes with Nate and tries to go comfort him. Yeah, she's probably a Libra. She goes to comfort him while he's trying to deal with Lisa. So she goes and they go try to find out where Lisa's car was when she called before. And they find her car and she's not there. So I think it's like this motel or something, because she had to stay overnight where she was driving. I guess it was so far that she had to stay overnight. But her car's there, but she's not. So all this stuff, and so Lisa's missing, and the way that episode ends, I'll never forget it. It's just really sad, and you just don't know what the future's going to be. Well, there's this whole talk about like serial killers and could she have been abducted? I mean, this has never really been done on a show that I can remember where that's not what the show is about. You know what I mean? It's like a side story. Usually this is the preface or the premises of a show. But this is just one of the characters on a show you're watching and they're missing. Like, they could be a victim of a serial killer. Like, I don't know that that's ever been done like that before. And that's what I mean. This show is groundbreaking because you're thinking, oh my God, is Lisa the victim of a serial killer? Like, what happened to her? So Nate ends up going off the deep end because Lisa's missing. Now he's going to be a single father. He's still in love with Brenda, but he can't really do anything about it because he's going to look like a terrible person because here he is, his wife, because they did get married. His wife is missing, and so he's just losing it. He's losing it. So we go through this whole thing where, she's missing and they're, trying to find her and all this stuff happens. And, I could talk about this show forever. I don't even care if anybody watches this at this point. Because if you're still watching this, I don't even know. Because I'm not even telling it. I'm not even doing it justice. I'm leaving out so much stuff. I'm basically telling you the whole show. But it's so interesting to me. It's such a good show. So I'm saving you having to watch it now. All you need is the visual. And actually, if you watch it, you can tell me what I got wrong. Because I'm sure I'm leaving stuff out. And that's fine too. So, Lisa goes missing. Brenda comes back into the picture. So this is why this show is so fascinating to me too. Because who would have known that I would live some of these things out? Not the whole missing thing, but just what happens after that. So, Lisa goes missing. They're trying to find her. All this stuff happens. So, I think a season goes by, a couple episodes go by, and she's still missing. And then, towards the end of the season, and I forget this part too. Nate finds a book or something from Lisa's sister's daughter. And it's a picture of Lisa, and it's after she left on that trip. And Nate comes to find out that Lisa had been having an affair with Lisa's husband. Lisa's sister's husband. And she tried to break it off. He goes back and rewatches their wedding video. And in it he sees Lisa having like a little hushed talk with her sister's husband. And he's a creep. I forget what his name is, but who cares? He's a total creep. But she's having like a little side conversation with him, and he's like, I never noticed that before, that they had like a weird dynamic going on. But you can clearly see that that's something not right with that. And so he starts putting all of those things together, and he's like, okay, she was with him. So he's realizing like his perfect Lisa, because she was acting like she was holier than thou, like with his whole thing with Brenda and everything. He's like, oh, I'm the bad guy, because I still want my ex, but, she's perfect because she's so loyal and everything. But come to find out, Lisa's not so perfect because she's been having an affair. Even though she tried to break it off, she did try to break it off, and I think she did break it off when she got married to Nate. But the sister's husband didn't want it to end, apparently. And so what happened was he ended up killing her. So we find that out because her body washes up. And so it doesn't happen right away that we find out who killed her. So that's another part, because that's what I mean. There starts to be speculation, like a serial killer, somebody abducted her. So that's the interesting thing too, because there's this whole like couple of episodes that go by where like, oh my God, who killed her? What happened to her? Somebody random killed her. And so it's just really cool and interesting, the writing again. But we come to find out that it was the sister's husband. So it's like somebody hiding in plain sight, which is another cool aspect of that dynamic. And so we realized, okay, so she was having an affair with the sister's husband, and, he killed her. So that happens. And then I'm just going to keep talking until I can't talk anymore, and then I'm going to go to sleep. And so, okay. So Lisa gets killed by her sister's husband. Oh, and then Nate goes to confront him because before he because he figures it out, but before the authorities can like get to the husband, Nate wants to go confront him. And he goes to confront him, and the guy ends up killing himself in front of Nate. I think he's with Brenda by that point, because I feel like Brenda was with him. Yeah. Oh, because there's this like whole scene where like Brenda has like an interaction with the oh yeah. Okay, so that's what it is. Brenda is with her because the sister is still in denial about this whole affair and everything. She the whole time like is defending her husband, and she thinks it's like somebody random who kills her sister and all this. Okay, so Brenda goes with Nate to I forget, they have some reason why they go, and I forget that part. Anyway, it's getting late. I'm forgetting. Okay, thanks. But so they go, and this video is all over the place. Forgive me. When I said it was going to be off the cuff, I wasn't lying. I started off really good with like telling you all the actors' names and everything, but now I'm just like over it. I just want to tell you why I like the show, so take it or leave it. But so yeah, so the sister and Brenda have this whole interaction. It's cool because Brenda's just like herself, and the sister's like, no, I don't like you, my sister never liked you, like I don't even know why you're here, like you need to F off. And then come to find out, the sister comes to realize that the whole time her husband is the evil one who did this. So the husband has no choice but to kill himself because the wife is like going to confront him. That's what it is. The wife is going to confront him, not Nate. And well, Nate tries to, but then the wife is like, no, he didn't do it. And then she goes and she's like, do you know that Nate is trying to accuse you of this? And so then the husband realizes, okay, I'm done. I'm caught. So, oh yeah, and there's this whole scene where it's really sad, you guys. Oh my gosh, I do have to tell you about this part. Sorry about this graininess. Oh my gosh. Talking about the 90s. Okay, so we'll just pretend like we were recording this in the 90s. That works. So the scene where they find Lisa's body is so sad, okay? Because Nate, being a funeral director, he knows what's going to happen to her body. And it was similar like when the father passed away, because David ended up doing the embalming of the father. And it was so sad. That was sad. But now here's Lisa, and Nate realizes that he does love her, but of course he still loved Brenda, but he did love her as well. And so when they find the body, there's this whole, that's what it was. Okay, so there was this whole argument between Nate and the sister, because the sister wanted Lisa buried in their family plot or whatever, and Nate didn't. And Nate was like, I'm her husband, I can say where I want her buried. And they had this whole argument. The sister was just being a real bitch about it and all this. And also the sister was trying to fight him for Maya, and he's like, hell no, you're not taking my daughter. Like, I have my mom here, she can help me, I can do this on my own. And she's like, I will not have that baby raised by Brenda. My sister would turn over in her grave, and all this stuff. So it turns into this whole custody thing and all this. Well, the Maya ends up staying with Nate and all of that. But with the whole burial of Lisa, they end up saying that they burned her and they have her ashes or whatever, because he says, oh, that's what Lisa wanted. She didn't want to be embalmed and all of this. And he lies to the family and says that they burned her and have her ashes. But really what he does is he takes her body and he goes and buries her in the grass. Like, basically he digs a hole himself and wraps her in like a loin cloth, or like, not a loin, but like muslin or something, like very natural, something that was natural, biodegradable, in the earth, and buries her like that under a tree or something and that is a cool episode. Yeah, that's a really cool episode. Oh, it's so creepy. I gotta watch that again. I can't explain it, and I'll just won't do it justice to try to explain it, but it's a cool episode. So I think it's called Ecotone. Oh, that's a really good episode, because he's sitting there in the dark with Claire and they're talking about, it gives me the creeps just to think about it. Anyway, because there's some creepy stuff in some of these episodes. I mean, it's not creepy anymore, but like back then, because like the what do you call that, visuals, I don't know, it's obviously getting late because I don't even know what I'm talking about. what is that called? You know what I'm talking about. So he ends up burying her in a tree, right? Okay, so because he's starting with this whole movement where he wants, like, he doesn't understand why people are buried in caskets. Like he said, it's such a waste, because there's a whole dynamic too where you see families come in and they can't afford a casket, they can't afford a funeral, so like funeral home tries to work with them, and then there's the whole thing where like the family, this is how they make their living, so how are they going to make any money if, because Nate will like be discounting people and stuff and feel bad for them. Like, he brings a whole humanitarian aspect in where Dave is all about the money and the, keeping the family legacy alive. And so there's a whole dynamic with that where they go back and forth, and Nate's like, oh yeah, I gave him 50% off that casket, and he's like, you can't do that, how are we going to pay for the bills every month? Like, you're not being realistic. So there's a whole thing with that too. And Nate is really starting to go more towards the natural, where he thinks that, people should be buried naturally and it should be biodegradable and they shouldn't have to be buried in caskets. Like, it's such a waste of money. And, you have people bringing their whole life savings just to bury a loved one, and it's just not right and all this stuff. So there's really some human good elements in this show that I can't even, it's so multi-layered. I can't put it all out there enough to give it the full scope that it needs to. So, but he buries her like that, but he doesn't tell anyone. It's his own secret with his wife that he has done her justice by burying her like that. That's how he believes, and that's how he wants to be buried also. And I don't think, oh yeah, I think that Claire finds him doing that. I think, because see, Claire knows a lot of his secrets, because at this point, many seasons have gone by, and we still know that Nate is dealing with this this brain issue. But Claire's the only one that knows. Like, throughout all these seasons, like, no one knows he's dealing with this. And I don't even think Lisa knew. There's been a few times where he's tried to bring it up, but then he like doesn't. But so fast forward. Okay, so Brennan, no, I'm sorry. He's digging the grave for Lisa, and he's got her, and he's like literally looks like a madman out in the middle of the, it's not a desert, out in the middle of a field somewhere, like trying to bury his wife, and he's crying, and he's just, he's losing it. And I think Claire comes up on him, and she helps him, or she, tells him it's going to be okay and all this. So their relationship, how it develops over the seasons, is really cute and endearing. His relationship with David also. There's a very touching scene. I would have to do a whole other video on David because I haven't even touched on him yet. But I mean, okay, I'll get to him in a minute. I'll try. This is gonna be like a 3-hour video. It's gonna take like 2 days for it to upload on YouTube. And I'm probably gonna delete it. But if you see this, I didn't delete it. Okay, so I'm gonna keep going. Once I get on these tangents, I might as well just finish it. So much for a 2-parter, right? What the hell was I thinking? It's just such a good show. I have to do it justice. So we have him doing that. Okay, so he buries her, and okay. And so by this time it's like season 5 or something. I mean, so the first 3 or 4 seasons, 5 seasons, it's a lot. It's a lot that happens, but it's also there's a lot I'm missing. I'm glazing over or brushing over. So Claire, well, I mean, Claire's stuff has already happened pretty much. So there's some really, really funny, good episodes that deal with Claire and her friends. And then she has a whole little lesbian tryst with Mina Suvari, who was also in American Beauty. Because now I'm getting off of Nate. Because I've talked enough about Nate. Oh no, no. Okay, I gotta finish. Wait, don't let me get off that yet, because the dynamic between Brenda and Nate is what I wanted to get back to, because there's more that goes on there. Okay, so because there's some really triggering scenes with Brenda and Nate that I have to talk about. Okay, so Lisa's gone, right? He's like, well, now I could just be with Brenda. Brenda's like, yeah, we can be together. I'll help you raise Maya. Like, I can love her like my own. So they try that whole thing, right? And I forget what happens, but Brenda has a whole relationship with this other guy. It's Justin Trudeau. You know him from, well, he was in American Psycho. He was in, well, he dated Jennifer Aniston. That's what he's mainly known for. But I know him from American Psycho and a couple other things. He plays kind of a cool character at first, but then he's like a kind of a wacko. Like, Brenda was newly out of her whole like nymphomaniac stage, and she's trying to really have like healthy relationships, and then she meets this guy, and he like wants her to be like a dominatrix. And she's like, can't we just have normal sex? Like, I've done that whole weird, crazy sex all the time. Like, I just want to have normal sex with someone, like intimate, passionate, normal sex. And this guy wants that, freaky stuff, and to be with him, this is the way he gets off and all that. So there's that whole thing. And she ends up getting pretty serious with him, and then ends up almost moving in with him. And they're about to buy this house together, and they're going to be together. And he starts talking about kids and all this stuff, and she's like, whoa, wait a minute, I don't know about all that just yet. We got to take it a little bit slower. So he's trying to really like rush. And she's like, whoa, because she still loves Nate. And she ends up cheating on him with Nate. Like, really bad. Like, they get caught in bed together by this guy, and it's really fucked up. So that ends, and then they end up, well, we might as well be together, and then they end up buying the house that she was supposed to buy with him. So she does him real dirty. So Nate ends up moving in. They've got this house. Now Brenda and Nate have this house together. They have Maya. It's supposed to be all perfect. And then, and then it's a new season. The new season starts with Brenda. She's having morning sickness. She's pregnant. So they have Maya. Now they're having a baby of their own. They're going to be this great little family. Well, Nate being Nate starts losing interest in Brenda. He's probably a Sagittarius. Or an Aries. I don't know. Aries, Leo, Sagittarius. Just saying. He's probably one of those. So it starts off all great. They've got a house, they got Maya. Brenda's doing a lot with Maya. And it's so funny. This is why I love Margaret Chenoweth. And you'll see. Hopefully whoever's watching this will watch this show. I'm telling you. You just have to see the dynamics, the conversations, all of it. So one day Margaret comes over and she's like, oh, I finally get to meet the fruit of Nate's loins. And so she talks about Maya. And she tells Brenda that she looks, fat or something. Like, she's just so like overt and out there. There is a part where Brenda and Nate are getting married, and Brenda ends up having a miscarriage. And I can't remember at what point of that. Is that before Lisa or after Lisa? I can't remember. Well, I think that was before. Anyway, they tried to get married once before. Oh no, that was. Okay, so that's how that season starts. Okay, so they are getting married. And she's thinking, everything's great because she got Maya, she's having a miscarriage. Yeah. Okay, so they're getting married and she ends up on the day before their wedding, she finds out she's having a miscarriage. So and almost everybody already knows she's expecting. So at the wedding, she has to kind of let everybody know she's not having a baby. It's pretty bad. So she talks all about how it's supposed to be the happiest day, and meanwhile she's literally, you know, bleeding out, having a miscarriage while she's walking down the aisle. So she's thinking, like, this isn't a great start to this fairy tale life that I thought I was going to have with Nate. And so there's all those dynamics. So she's, bummed, and there's a whole little thing where she has like a ephemeral, is that the right way of saying it? Where she has an interaction with Lisa. Obviously Lisa's dead, but in her head she's having this imaginary conversation with Lisa where Lisa's telling her she's never going to be a mother like her womb is too wounded because of all the men she's had sex with, and that's why her body can't allow her to carry a baby. It's pretty fucked up. But it's subconscious stuff that's coming out, and that's why I love the show. Because this is the stuff that happens in real life, and that's why that this was very good writers that wrote this, women and men, because men could not write a scene like that. They wouldn't know that it's the kind of things we have going through our minds when we're having miscarriages and abortions and all of this stuff. And that's why I said it's triggering and meaningful. So she ends up ending that in her head like, well, shut the fuck up. That's why I'm here and you're dead. And he's with me. So, she gains her power back basically by just, dismissing that. And it goes on, and then at some point she ends up I think it's Nate's 40th birthday. It has to be. It's his 40th birthday, and he comes downstairs. He's looking in the mirror, and he's seeing that his face is changing. He's getting older, and he's kind of like questioning his life again. I mean, he's thinking he should be pretty happy. He's got the woman that he thought he wanted to be with. He's got his daughter, who's now like 2.5 or 3. And even though he's lost Lisa, he's, got Brenda by his side, and things are doing pretty good. I forget if he's back with the funeral home, or because at some point he goes and like works at like a dog park and like does all this stuff, and he's basically like a stay-at-home dad, and all this different other stuff too happens before he ends up being with Brenda. So I do that. I go forward and backwards a lot. Sorry. But so he okay, where was I going with that? Come on, stay on topic, girl. Oh, yeah, his 40th birthday. And she comes out of nowhere and is like, hey, I got a surprise for you for your birthday. And he's like, oh, okay, and he you can tell he's not too happy or thrilled with his life. I mean, that's kind of the sense we're getting. Even though he's supposed to be so happy, this is the woman he wanted. He's got his child, whatever. And she hands him a pregnancy test, a positive pregnancy test. And if you've ever seen, sorry to bring this up, but the Chris Watts thing that's pretty much what it's like. That's why when I saw that, I thought of 6 Feet Under. That's why I said I think about this show all the time. I see it in everyday life all the time. What's her name? Sorry for forgetting. Chris Watts. I'm trying to remember to retain too much information in my head at this point. I'm losing it. It's pretty sad that I can remember Chris Vaughn's name and not his wife. Anyway, yeah, that scene where she comes and shows him the pregnancy and he's like, oh, great, you know? So that's kind of Nate's reaction. Great, having a baby. It's just he's not satisfied. He's not happy with his life. He's not satisfied. But he puts on a little show and pretends like that's what he wanted to hear for his 40th birthday. And then at some point it's a funeral. Okay, so a high school friend of his family ends up coming in, and his friend has passed away. So the other friend, there was like a group of 3 friends, and the other friend and him end up going out for beers or something, and the guy's like talking to him about like his life, and he lives a very regular family life, and the wife and the kids and blah blah blah. And he's like, sometimes I just really want to just go and date some high school chick, or some college chick, or I just want to date some younger woman and all this stuff. And Nate's like, yeah, you're a real fucking asshole for saying shit like that. But in reality, Nate's probably thinking along the same thing. Not high school chick, but you know what I mean. Like a younger woman to kind of escape the whole mundane family life that he's, I wanted to say doomed to live. He thought he wanted. It's the life he thought he wanted, but it's really turning out that's not the case he's seeing. But he doesn't have the guts to say it to Brenda, because now she's pregnant, and he's got to make the best of it, just like he did with Lisa when Lisa said she was pregnant. It just shows the reluctance of a lot of men when they find out they're going to be dads. They think it's great on one hand, but at the other hand, I think they're scared, and then also kind of dissatisfied, maybe a portion of being dissatisfied. I don't know. You get the gist of what I'm trying to say. So anyway, there's got to be more to life than this, right? A lot of us have been there, and I've thought that. So I think he expresses this in that episode to this guy, but he's also like, this guy's, an asshole, basically. And so then I think that's the episode where they have this big 40th birthday. I think it's a surprise party, and Brenda throws it for him, and so all the cast of characters all show up for Nate's 40th birthday, like the mom and David and his boyfriend and all of this and all of that. So, but it's another one that really sticks out in my head because they're having this birthday party, and a bird gets in the house, and they're all freaking out, trying to figure out how to get the bird out and all this. Well, Nate ends up towards the end of the show, like all these different things happen, and I forget. Billy's been in and out of rehab. He's there, and he's supposedly doing better and all of this. He goes on and off his meds quite often, and we know when he's on his meds or off his meds. A lot of the times, you can tell because he doesn't shave and different things. So anyway, he's supposed to be doing good, and then Billy's Brenda's brother. So yeah. And he always has this weird dynamic with Nate because he doesn't like that his sister is with Nate. He doesn't want his sister to be with anyone, quite honestly, but him. But, awkward. So there's this whole thing. And then I didn't talk about it yet, but Ruth ends up marrying this guy named George. And there's a whole lot that goes on with George. I mean, he's a fantastic character, too. Played by the guy from American Horror Story. He's also in American Horror Story. He was in the Asylum, as well as a lot of other stuff. He's a very well-known actor. Cromwell? Anyway, he's amazing. But we see him go through dementia, I think, or Alzheimer's. It's really sad. But He's a very endearing character. Oh my gosh, my friend. Again, I'm thinking of her because there's some funny episodes that have to do with George. So anyway, so the 40th birthday. So he, towards the end, oh, Nate and Brenda are arguing like the whole time. So you can see the tensions building up with them. Like she's on this like cloud nine because she's finally going to have this baby, and you know, she thinks Nate and her are like on the same page and they're going to have their own baby even though they have Maya. You know, because his reaction, even though he's happy at first, she's like, I don't think you're really happy about this. Like, I don't see your enthusiasm. Like, you already have a kid. I don't have a kid of my own. Like, you're taking this joy away from me. And he's like, well, you know, I'm kind of happy with just having her. I mean, I didn't really ask to have another kid. And so she's pissed, you know, because I would be too. Because I'm like, shit, you know, I'm taking care of your kid, but what about us having our own child? And this is where it's triggering for me, and this is what's really hard to believe when I look back at my life when I was watching the show originally and what I know now about dating someone who has kids and I don't have a child with them. It's fucking hard as shit. That's all I'm going to say. No, I'm going to say more. It's hard as shit. Really. Like, I am not saying I would never do it again, but it's just something about being a step parent to kids that aren't yours. It really takes a very specific type of person. And I've grappled with that. I've just got to be honest. And I'm probably going to do a video on that. I have to really think that one out and put it out in the right way. But it is not for the faint of heart. I forget it. Somebody recently said, I was talking to somebody, I was like, yeah, I would have had the most perfect relationship with this guy if only he didn't have kids. I have kids, so trust me. I'm not saying that I'm better than anyone because I don't want to date them because they have kids. But it's just a lot harder when they're not your kids. And I'm sure men have felt that about me. Like, dang, she would be perfect if she didn't have kids. It's the luck of the draw sometimes. But, you know, it's really hard to be able to say, I'm a parent with kids, but I want to date someone who doesn't have kids. I mean, I don't know. It's hard to find someone who's okay with that, I guess. You can't help who you love. And it's just really challenging. You just have to be up for that kind of challenge. And if you have it in you, oh man, I think you're awesome if you can do that. But it's really, really difficult. And I don't know if I would do it again, to be honest. But anyway, so there's a whole thing going on with them, and they're arguing like the whole time, and she's put on this whole surprise party for him, and he's just ungrateful the whole time, and you're just completely through with Nate at this point. And okay, so from George enters Maggie. Now, Maggie is George's daughter, and this is an actress. I've never seen her in anything else. I don't know if she's ever been in anything else, but she's a very mousy, quiet person. But after the chaos that he's dealt with Lisa and how everything ended with her, and then Brenda and her chaos and all of that, and her, all their history, Maggie's like a breath of fresh air. And Nate starts developing a friendship with Maggie that turns into more. And it kind of comes to a head this night at the party. And what happens is, Nate and Brenda are arguing the whole night. He ends up going into a back room and just hanging out with Maggie to get away from everyone. and the bird is everywhere and everything. He ends up talking with Maggie the whole night, and then Brenda's pissed at him, and he ends up killing the bird. He like whacks the shit out of it and kills it. It's some like beautiful bird too. And I hate that because I had a bird come into my room before, and I just think birds are spiritual and loving creatures, and I love birds. So when he killed that bird, I couldn't take it. It was fake, obviously, but still, I wasn't okay with that. I did not approve of that. But, you know, it was like a way of him killing an aspect of an ideology, I guess you would say, in my opinion. Like, I'm done living for other people kind of thing. Because I think up to this point, he had been doing his best to kind of done what's expected of him. You know, be the good guy, be with the woman who wants to be with you, and she wants to help you raise your daughter, you know, all of these things. And I think that night he was just done. He was done with everything. Like, F this. And also kind of like the reality of his illness was starting to come to the forefront. Like, he was starting to think about it more. And so I think it was like, and so Maggie, she offers him a different way of looking at things because she's a Puritan. And so she goes to worship, and part of what their religion, yeah, I think it's Puritan, right? Mormon, Puritan, I guess it's called Puritan. But so she takes him to a service, and they just sit there, and it's like mostly just silence. And they do a lot of meditation, but every now and then someone will just speak up, and somebody will stand up and say, I'm so thankful for my car today. Or, you know, I was able to get to the store and, you know, do what I needed to do because I have a car, and I'm so grateful for my neighbors because they always help me. Something like that. Somebody just stands up and says whatever they want to say, but it's mostly just silence. And so she walks Nate through this religion and introduces him to spirituality, basically. You know, let's face it, that is spirituality. We all have our own viewpoint of spirituality, and whether it's religion or not, you know, he's never really, as much death as he's faced and all of that, and as many services as he's been to, and he's seen, you know, Catholic services done, Jewish services done, all of these things, he's never really seen anything like this, you know, where there's really meditation and silence. And he likes it. You know, it's a different way of viewing things, and he really likes it. So, and she's kind of introduced this to him, and she's a very peaceful, welcoming presence in his life, and he just wants to grasp onto that and hold on to it. And Maggie is lonely, and she's got a very somberness to her. And I think Nate offered her a different way of looking at things too. So they gravitate towards each other. And it's awkward because George is married to his mom and all of this. But they end up coming together and developing something. And they don't act on it at first. And then one night he has Brenda go with him to a service because she's like, what is going on with you? Like, you're hanging out with Maggie and all this stuff. He's like, oh, well, you know, I like to go to these services. You should come. And so Brenda goes, and she's like, that stuff is nonsense. Like, because I think, you know, Brenda's really an atheist or something. I don't know. I think she's an atheist. And she's just not feeling it. And she kind of leaves him to that. And it just basically throws him right into Maggie's arms because this is something they have in common. Brenda's not on board with it, and it's like that's kind of sealed the fate. And one night he ends up going to Maggie's house, or going to hang out with Maggie, and she invites him in, and they end up talking, and he just feels very comfortable with her, and they end up having sex. And this is the episode that everyone always talks about and remembers from this whole entire show. As soon as they're done having sex, she says, like, how are you feeling? And he says, how are you feeling? Or something like that. They're just talking about how they're feeling. He's like, I feel great. I haven't felt this good in so long. Like, he just feels so free. He feels comfortable with her. It's like alignment. And then, boom, he stands up. He collapses. But first, before he collapses, because everyone always talks about this episode, he notices his arm is numb. And he goes, Narm. Because he's trying to say his arm is numb. Because she's like, are you okay? And he starts looking weird. And he's like, Narm. He's like, Narm. And then passes out and collapses. So Maggie's like, holy shit, what the hell? This dude just passed out, literally. He's like in his underwear, and she's like got nothing on, and so she calls or she has like underwear on too or whatever, but she calls the 911, and the ambulance comes and takes him or whatever. So they're supposed to be at the service. No one is supposed to know he's with Maggie. He's married, he's got a kid at home and the pregnant wife. And before this happened, we see Brenda a lot with Maya. Like, Brenda's always with Maya. So Nate's off doing whatever, and she's taking care of his kid. Triggering, because I've been there. So she... So triggering. I think that's why I haven't watched it in a while, because it might just trigger me to, like, go the fuck off on somebody. But she... So... And these are such well written. They have to be written by women, these episodes. So the ambulance comes, and then she has to go to the hospital. Maggie, she's annoying, okay? I'm just going to warn you ahead of time. Like Lisa, she's a very annoying character. My friend and I used to say this all the time. Brenda's annoying in her own way, but Maggie's very annoying because she's so soft-spoken and mousy. Like, I don't know how else to put it. And just like, Nate likes that. I mean, when I was watching this, I thought Nate was attractive, but he's not like Jason Momoa or anything, but he's attractive. And so it's just like Maggie just doesn't seem like his type or whatever, but whatever. So she's peaceful. That's what he wants. Someone peaceful and easy, just simple. So she's talking to the doctors or the ambulance, and they're like, she's like, they're asking him all this information, like, what's his date of birth, what's this and this, and she's like, I don't know. And they're like, well, what's this? I don't know. And they're like, who are you? And she's like, I'm just a friend, I don't know anything. And so, like, well, just meet us at the hospital and call whoever, somebody needs to know what's going on with him. So she calls David, and David's like, Maggie? And she's like, yeah, David, I need to tell you. He's like, oh my God, I'll meet you. Actually, I think the season before, Nate had told David about his brain thing, because I think something else had happened. Anyway, I think he told David. So she calls David, and David's like, oh my God, I'll be right there. And he's like, Maggie, I don't think he asked her on the phone, but then they all get to the hospital. So Claire, she's dating some new guy. Like, there's this whole funny thing. Like, Claire has some of the funniest episodes. There's this whole funny thing with, like, Claire goes to work, like, this corporate job. It's just like, It's just like Office Space. Like, it's just people asking for the birthday cake to sign the birthday cards and stuff, and like, corporate cubicles, and she has to wear pantyhose. It's funny. She has a whole song about wearing pantyhose, because sometimes they had little montages where they did songs on a few of the episodes where it was kind of funny. They're cheesy when you look back at them now, but it fits the dark comedy of the show. Anyway, so Claire meets this like lawyer type, like totally not, like he's a Capricorn probably, and they're just total opposites, but they get along, and he's nice to her and everything. And she's had all these crappy boyfriends. I mean, one of them was gay, the other one was like a drug addict, and she had all these horrible boyfriends. So this guy is like, his name's Ted, and he's a is he famous? Well, I saw him in some other stuff, but I don't know. Anyway, he's a nice guy. So she ends up dating him, and they work together in this corporate place. So anyway, so she calls, Maggie calls David, and then he calls Claire, and the mom and all of them end up showing up at the hospital. And the doctor tells them, well, he's basically in a coma, and they all start to have to answer all these questions. I don't know, but it gets to be where Maggie is talking to the doctor, and the doctor's like, okay, what led up to this? What was going on before this happened? And she's like telling him, well, we went to service, and she's trying not to tell him about the sex because he's married and his wife is right there, like Brenda's sitting there. And he's like, okay. And then so she goes and tries to tell the doctor, like, to go away from where everyone is sitting, and she's like, yeah, there was physical activity. I'll never forget this because it's just funny. It's not funny in the show, like, it's actually very serious, but she's like, there was physical activity before. And he's like, okay, what kind of physical activity? She's like, there was an emission or something. The way she says it is just like, what the fuck? Anyway, she tells him basically he came and then he passed out. So so the doctor's like, okay, then it's like, oh, okay, I know what you're saying now. So anyway, he's in a coma, and they're all there, and they're like gonna stay there the whole night, and they're sleeping there and all this stuff, and they're all having their own little conversations. And Brenda's like, it gets to be where they're all questioning Maggie, kind of like, what was happening, and all this stuff, but it's just so awkward and tense and good, but David's like getting to the bottom of it. He's not like trying to buy into all the little drama between the two women and everything, but Brenda's like, so what time exactly did this happen? Because he left a long time ago, so she's pissed. She knows something's up. And Brenda's like, I don't understand why he was with you though. Like, why were you why he was at your house? And he's like, she's like, oh, he was just dropping me off. And she's like, I still don't understand, so there's a lot of that going on. And then Brenda goes up and talks to the doctor, and she's like, well, can I see him? I'm his wife. And it's like, the doctor's like, no, we want to talk to her, pointing to Maggie. And she's like, but I'm his wife. So, there's all of that. And then, women just, we can all relate or get into this kind of drama or this kind of tense aspect of this, type of scenario. So it turns out, Brenda ends up finding out that the gist of what really was happening. I forget exactly when it hits her, but she knows. And there's an awkward moment where, like, she goes to get like a candy bar or something to eat at the vending machine, and David's like, how far along are you now? Like, and it's just, then you really remember, like, she's pregnant, and this is her husband, and he's in a coma, and he's just had sex with some other woman, and it's just all like so much. And it's sad, you feel bad for Brenda. And Maggie's just sitting there like, she just happened to like walk into this. I mean, she didn't know he had this condition, and who would have known this would have happened, because he's obviously had sex many times before and this hasn't happened. So what is the deal? And So then we followed, like, they some of them stay, I think they sleep over in the hospital, whatever. So the next morning, he's still, I think he's still in a coma, but um, he's having all these, like, flashbacks, or I think he is. I don't know. I don't remember that part. But he wakes up from the coma, and Brenda's like, they're all excited. Oh my God, he's woken up from the coma. So Brenda's like, I need to be the first one to see him. So she, like, goes in there, and he's like, just very matter of fact with her. And she's like, so why were you with Maggie? Like, what's going on? He's like, yeah, I don't want to talk about this right now. Where's Maya? I mean, he is so to the point. I don't know. Even if he had just come out of the coma, I would have slapped the shit out of him. I don't care. But at the same time, I get it. He's just had a near-death experience. He wants to live for his life now. He doesn't care if it offends anyone or pisses anyone off. He just has to do him. And I can relate to that, and I can get that too. So he kind of glazes over the whole Maggie thing, but he does tell Brenda that he doesn't think he's in love with her. And she's like, okay. Like, she's upset and crying, and, there's this whole conversation that happens where she's like, I don't understand, when did you stop loving me, and all this stuff. He's like, I don't know. I just know that now that this has happened, I want to live my best life. I want to live being happy. I don't want to be feeling like I need to do things that I don't want to do, and da-da-da. And she's like, well, what about Maya? And he's like, oh, we'll talk about that when we need to. And, meaning like they can raise her apart, but, I mean, that's not her daughter, so why would they do that, But it's like one of those things on shows where they're like, okay. But they end it kind of awkwardly where she's like, okay, well, I'm sure you need your rest, but I'm going to go ahead and go pick up Maya from your mom, and so that she can come see you or whatever. I know you want to see her. And he's like, yeah, okay, thanks. And then he just, like, ends the conversation. It's just so, oh my God, it's so awkward. I really would have slapped the shit out of him. So then she leaves, and then Maggie comes in, and he's like, hey, you. Like, he's all happy and all smiles, and he's like, last night was really something. And I mean, he is just in love. It's so weird. But she's like, hey, and she's still her mousy self, and he's like, I never knew that love could feel like this, or I never knew life could feel like this, and I'm just so happy. I feel great. I feel rejuvenated. I feel everything. And she's like, wow, I'm happy, but I'm worried, and he's like, oh no, everything's fine, everything's great, and I never knew anybody could fuck me to death, basically, he says something like that, and she's like, come on, don't be vulgar. And I think that was exactly what she said, actually. And I mean, she's a Puritan, so that's vulgar to her. But then she's like, well, I'm gonna let you rest. And he's like, yeah, I can't wait to get out of here, and we can spend time together or whatever. So they ended like that, and then different people come in, like Federico comes in, because I didn't talk about him a lot, but he's like an integral character on a lot of the episodes. Like they follow his life a lot too, and his storylines are interesting sometimes, but he's not a main character, so I'm not going to really talk about him that much. But anyway, he comes in, and then David comes, and Brenda ends up bringing Maya, and I forget why Ruth isn't on a lot of these episodes I've been talking about. I don't remember why. I don't think she came. Or she might have the night before, but anyway. So she's confused too, like why? Ruth and George come, but she's kind of like, okay, why were you with Maggie? So even she, everybody's kind of like trying to figure out this whole dynamic, but I can't believe I've been talking about this show for 2.5 hours. Oh my god. I'm a lunatic. What the hell? Okay. I'm just gonna keep going with it. I don't care. It's for me. I'm just gonna like keep going. I'm going through almost the whole show by this point. Really only Nate's storyline. I haven't even gotten into Claire or David. Oh my god, David. Like I said, it's gonna be like 3 hours long. Just talking about David. Okay. I have to get to the part though. Okay, so I send a part. Okay, da 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 da. Okay, so Nate's there in the hospital. Everybody's coming to, say, they're so glad he's out of the coma and everything, and he's fine, because I think this was the season ending before this episode was he was dead, because he had passed out and whatever. He was dead. He was in a coma. And it ended like Nate Fisher, 1972, 2005, and then it said that, and then it went invisible, like it blanked out the 2005. So it's like he was dead, but then he woke up. So he did have a near-death experience. He died and then was woke back up. So he's laying there in the hospital, and all of these things. So you're thinking, oh, thank God, he's gonna live and whatever. Because this isn't the end of this isn't the end of the show. It's still this is like a whole new season. So you're thinking, well, he's now he's gonna probably end up with Maggie, and we're gonna have this whole storyline. So that's what we're thinking. So he's sitting there in the hospital, and he's hanging out with David, and they're chit-chatting, and they're watching some show on TV, and he's falling asleep, and he's starting to kind of daydream about him and David and their dad. And they're in this like Scooby-Doo looking van, one of those like typical California vans with like space for like surfboards and everything. They've got their surfboards, they've got their bathing suits on, but Nate looks like pretty much himself, but David is a totally different David. It's so weird. You guys have no idea how meaningful this episode is, or this particular aspect of it, because the David he's thought of all this time, this conservative, I'm telling you, when I tell you, if you look at all the episodes, David's always wearing a suit. He's always dressed impeccably. He's very OCD, like the way he speaks, the way he carries himself. He's just very prudish, but he's always got suits on. He's very conservative. He's religious, he's all of these things, uptight, high-strung. But when he has this little daydream and it's David, it's a whole nother David. He has like blonde hair. He talks like a surfer dude. He's like, yeah, man, let's light another one. And he's like, for real, like, this is going to be gnarly. Like, he's a surfer dude. And when we have a rebirth and our false identity falls away, we see our true identity as our soul really is. And I think that's what he was experiencing there. Like, that David was just a mask of David. Like, this is the real David. He's like a totally cool surfer type dude that's just like got no worries and no cares, and he's not uptight and anxious. He's actually very carefree and fun loving, and he just wants to hang out and go surfing. And I just love that, because I feel like that's really how it is. When you get to the soul of someone, their real true self, they're not at all what you thought they were. And I just love the concept of that, and I think about this show so often because of that. And it just always stood out to me, that in particular. So, and he falls asleep. David's there, and he's having this little vision of this. They're in the back of this van and they're going surfing, and the dad is like driving the van, and he's like, yeah, here we go, guys, you ready for this? This is gonna be awesome. Like, yep, pedal to the metal, just go, dad, just keep going. And they're going like towards the water, and it's like ocean in front of them, and that's it. It's like the ocean, and they're going surfing, and it's the two brothers and the dad, and it's just a carefree life, and it's no worries, no cares, just a beautiful sunny day, and they're going surfing, and it's just the life. And then David falls asleep. This is Nate's thing, and also David's. I can't remember if that's actually... No, that's David's daydream. Yeah, that's David's. So that's his that's his higher self showing him who he really is, too. It's weird. Okay, anyway. I'm going to get too deep metaphorical on that. Okay, so David falls asleep with that vision. It's actually Nate's vision that he's transposing and whatever. Okay. He falls asleep. Nate's next to him. He's got the bandages on his head and everything. Because Nate had surgery, too, you know, and he was in the coma and then the surgery and everything. So, and he looks over and Nate's sleeping. They're talking, and the next thing you know, Nate's falling asleep. And he falls asleep, too. And then the next thing you know, he's having that little dream, and then you hear beep, and he looks over. Nate's dead. Nate was dead, you guys. He died. He died. For real this time. And so David's like, what the fuck? And then it all begins. He's dead. Like, really dead. And David starts to lose it. I mean, previous to this... Okay, now I'll get into David. Okay, so... David had the whole relationship with Keith. So he gets with Keith. They have this hot and heavy affair. They love each other. They're with each other. They're together. Then they break up. David starts dating all these random guys. He starts going to gay bars. He's doing drugs. He's doing ecstasy. He's doing all these crazy things. Meanwhile, his ex, Keith, is like a straight and narrow cop. And in his daily life, David's like a church-going, chorus singing, you know, choir boy or whatever. But his nightlife starts to be kind of crazy when he's not with Keith. He starts going to all these bars, like I said, and he's doing ecstasy, and he's like, you know, doing all this stuff. So anyway, this is the funny thing. So on one of these trysts, when he's doing the ecstasy, he's dating this guy who was like a square dancing instructor or something, and he ends up giving him some ecstasy, and David takes some, and then he has this crazy night. They have like a threesome, like all these threesomes are happening. They go to gay bars, everything, all this crazy life. The next day, he has this horrible headache. He feels like shit, and his mom's like, "Are you okay?" You know, he's like, "Oh, I'm fine." So he hurries up and he looks in his pocket. He's got more ecstasy, so he puts them in the aspirin bottle. Like they, you know, it's like every other kitchen. You keep like Tylenol or something, or you know, like something like that for headaches. He puts it in the aspirin bottle. And he puts it up, and Nate is always having headaches, so he goes in and gets some aspirin. So you're like, oh God, he's going to take the ecstasy. Okay, he doesn't. But the ecstasy's still in there, right? So, many episodes later, Ruth is dating this guy who's like a hairdresser or something. It's kind of funny. He's always like wanting to have sex and everything. He's like a hairdresser though. But anyway, so he goes and takes her camping. And she's like, well, I better bring some aspirin on the camping trip. And just in case. They're on the camping trip. Ruth takes the ecstasy by accident. It's so funny. It's such a classic episode. I don't even know. Like, the writers must have had so much fun writing this show. Like, the little scenarios that happen and everything. She's like dancing around the forest with bears and stuff. It's just so funny. Oh my god. Hilarious. Brilliant, brilliant writing. Just the fact that they prolonged it and didn't have Nate take it that time, but Nate did take it by accident another time because they had a dinner party with one of Ruth's boyfriends. She wanted everybody to meet her new boyfriend. This was before George. Vladimir. Was it Vladimir? She dated this Russian guy. Oh god, I can't remember his name. I said Vladimir. Anyway, so she dates this Russian guy, and she wants to introduce him. So I think this is the same night that Claire and her friends are painting their room. They're painting the guest house. So Claire was living in the guest house. This is when Mina Savari was on a lot of the episodes. I think they were on... They were on shrooms or something. I don't know. They were on something too. So her and all the friends are all on this other drug. I can't remember. But it might have been ecstasy, but they were all like on this drug. And the brother calls and says, "Hey, it's dinner time, you know," and she brings all her drug friends and everything to the dinner, and they're all like got paint all over them. I mean, it's hilarious. And then Nate accidentally takes the ecstasy and he's acting crazy. It's just so funny. Anyway, back to David. I'll get back to Nate's death later. So, yeah, David goes through the whole crazy stuff without Keith. And then him and Keith go through some stuff where they're kind of like having an open relationship, and they end up bringing guys home from bars, and then David has like a conversation with him one night, like, "Hey, this is fun, like picking up other guys, but I really would like it just to be us." And Keith's like, "I don't know, I like that we have this, you know, I really like our relationship like that." So they have different things with their relationship, going in and out of being open and then not, and then they also go to church together, so it's like weird, like they want to be good, they want to be like a monogamous couple, but then they don't, and then they do, and then they don't. And then they also go through all kinds of stuff where they try to adopt kids, and then, you know, all this stuff. So there's all of that. And like I was saying, it's a groundbreaking show because the homosexual relationship aspect of it, you know, it's fairly new to see homosexual relationships is very similar to heterosexual relationships, where they have different discussions, like, I mean, the different dynamics of a homosexual relationship. I'll just leave it at that. And the insecurities by each of them, and with their, you know, different aspects of whatever. So him and David, Keith and David, you know, they're together and then they're not, and then they're together and then they're not, and so, you know, all of that happens. And then there's like some major episodes with David. So there's a point at which David, I forget, he's driving the hearse or whatever one time, and he's such a nice guy. He feels bad, and he picks up this random guy. He tries to help this random guy that's like saying he's broken down or something, and he needs help or whatever. So David's like, "Yeah, you know, I can take you to the gas station, whatever." I forget how it exactly happens. But anyway, he picks up this guy, and the guy turns out to be a complete psycho, okay? The guy ends up torturing him. Like, it's a real life, like this. Now, if this was on TV now, people would be like, "Oh my god, that's so triggering, I can't watch it." They're all sensitive and shit. But this stuff really happens in real life. So he has a very traumatic experience with this guy. This guy is a psycho. He makes him do drugs. He makes him do crack. He beats him up. He calls him gay and all faggots and all of this. But then he asks him that he really wants to sleep with him, and he's gonna rape him and all that stuff. I mean, it's a mind fuck, you know, basically. And he's just a complete psycho, this guy. And he tortures him the whole night. He beats him up. He makes him wish he was dead, basically. And at one point, he does light him on fire, I think. He pours gas on him, and then he tries to light him on fire. So it legitimately could have been a murder. I don't think, maybe the writers thought maybe they would have David be murdered, but I think people would have lost their shit if that would have happened. But everything but being murdered basically happened to David that night. So he was very extremely traumatized. And that's why I was saying, when I was talking about everything that he had been through, and then when Nate ends up passing away, it's just so sad, because they had become very close through this whole traumatic experience. I mean, David, and this is why Michael C. Hall, I think this is why the show won so many Emmys. And also, I think Michael C. Hall, I don't know if he won any kind of awards for the show, but his acting is just brilliant and so touching in these scenes after this happens, because the victimization of him through this, it's so sad. I just, when I think about it, it just breaks my heart, because he gets saved, and then I think it's a new season that starts up after that happens. But I mean, we get reintroduced to David as a victim, because he's always been the one who's got everything together, and he's pretty independent. He doesn't really need anyone, but he, in his relationship with Keith, he's very needy to an extent, but he's also pretty sure of himself. So there's different, aspects, but as I'm saying, character development, I can't explain it enough. I mean, it's just like, you can feel the sense of this person disintegrating, his personality just changing through this traumatic experience. And he goes through a whole thing where he's seeing this guy's face and everybody he sees. There's some really scary episodes because the guy was wearing like a red hoodie, and it's all very prophetic, but he sees this guy's face and everybody. I mean, he's just so traumatized. He starts having panic attacks. I mean, this is the first show that ever really depicted panic attacks, in my opinion. I'm sure it had been done before, but not in a way that you could relate to it so much like this show. I don't know. I've never really seen any other show really depict panic attacks from trauma like this. Because he literally just goes through periods where he's sitting in a room alone, and he just has to call someone because he's literally losing his mind. And by this time, Keith has been offered a job to basically be a security guard for a pop star. I think it's supposed to be, like kind of like Britney Spears-ish type, or, like Ariana Grande type of person. So he has to be a bodyguard for this chick, and so his job is pretty demanding, but he's also getting paid a lot, and he really has to take the job. And David understands, but he's been through this traumatic experience, so there's a lot of times where he's calling him, and there's one particular scene where he calls Keith is busy and he can't, Keith starts to be in the closet, by the way, too, during this whole thing, because he's trying to play like he's heterosexual to the other security guards, because he doesn't want them to like judge him really and all this. So anyway, he's being very fake and phony, and David will call him and he'll pretend he's talking to a woman, and all this stuff. So anyway, there's that. So David, not only does he not have the full support of his partner, but he also has him denying their relationship, basically, which is even more traumatic, because he's adding trauma on top of trauma. So at one point he calls one of the guys that they had a threesome with, because he just doesn't have anybody else to talk to about it, and the guy basically shames him and is like, get over it. Like, what the fuck is wrong with you? Like, I don't really want to hang out with you. Like, where's the other guy? Like, he's way more fun. He's just a total dick about it. So, and then you feel bad for David because he just starts crying, and this guy is just like so the opposite of compassionate. So there's that. And then it's just really sad. I mean, so fast forward, when Nate passes away, his reaction is the saddest because there's nothing left for him to give. Like, after that, it's just like he just doesn't know really how to go on with his life, and they show him trying to pull himself together because by this time him and Keith have adopted these 2 boys, and the boys are like 10 and 6 or something like that. I don't know. They're like school age kids, but he's trying his best to like wake up in the morning and get them off to school and stuff, but it's like easy, like even the smallest things, like he's like, my brother's dead, like I just can't function. And so the grief is just palpable in these episodes, and really worth watching. I can't say it enough. So I mean, I've kind of gone over all of it. I'm not going to keep, I could babble on and on about the show forever and ever, and there's plenty that I didn't go over, including one of my very favorite episodes, because Claire and Billy end up dating, which is a total train wreck and hilarious to watch. But yeah, that's one of my favorite episodes because he just depicts a bipolar person so perfectly. But I will just leave it at that, I guess. Hopefully you have enjoyed this 2-hour video about me rambling about 6 Feet Under. If you've watched it, you're a trooper. And let me know if you watch the show, what your thoughts are. What are your favorite episodes? Let's have a chat about it. I mean, I could go on and on about the show, and I'm probably going to watch it start to finish now that I'm sitting here reminiscing, because I love the characters so much. I don't know. Who would you say is your favorite character? If you watch this show, let me know. Comment, please. Let me know, because I really want to know. I got to think about that one. Let me think real quick. I mean, I love Nate. I relate to Nate a lot, but I love Claire. Thinking about the whole show, though, like every single character, I didn't even talk about her, and I didn't go through Ruth a lot. There's so many things I could say about Ruth, but I think Ruth's sister, Sarah, is my favorite character, other than the main characters. I can just imagine me being like her, and it's so funny. Oh my god, I didn't talk about that either. Oh my god. Okay, my butt is asleep. That's why I keep moving like this. Seriously, you guys, my butt is asleep. I didn't even know your butt could fall asleep. Okay, I have to tell about this. 2 of my favorite episodes. Okay, I'll try to be brief, because my butt is asleep, and I really don't know how to manage this. Okay, so it just makes me laugh to even think about it. What do I talk about? Okay, so Claire and Billy are... I tried to show this show to my ex-boyfriend. I tried to get him to watch it. He would not watch it. That just shows how uncool he really was. Now the lighting's all weird. But, so I was saying, how on this show, like, Billy used to go on and off his meds, right? So him and Claire were dating. And he was feeling so good dating Claire that he went off his meds. And she ends up getting, or she argued for her money from her mom, because even though she was supposed to go to college, she went to art school, so she really wasn't supposed to get the money, but she ended up getting it, I think. And she starts spending all her money on all this crazy stuff. Like, she buys this nice camera and everything. And then Billy, this is not good. Billy, with his bipolar self, starts trying to help her spend the money. This is why my ex-boyfriend probably didn't want to watch it, because this is what he was like. But so it's such a funny episode. I wish I could link it. I don't know. I'll try to link it if I could. I'll try to. I don't think I'm allowed to. It's probably copyright or something. I don't know how that works. But anyway, I'll try to link it. But he's going through one of his manic. So, you know, bipolar, like, you go through manic and depressive. So his depressive, first he goes through the manic episode, and that's what's so funny, because it's the scene where they're dancing around. He's like wearing like tight leather pants, and he's like, "You like these pants? I just bought them today." And he's like, "Let's just move to Europe." And she's like, "Yeah, let's go to Spain. Let's, go see the sights. Let's go to museums and have sex all day in Paris." And like, they start talking about all these big grandiose dreams and everything. And it's just so funny, because I've been there. Oh my God, have I been there? It's usually on drug binges I've been on in the past. I don't do that anymore, but, past. But, they're talking about all these things they're going to do, and they're going to live in Europe, and he's got on tight leather pants, and he's just dancing around, and she's talking about all the stuff she bought today, and he's like, "You have money for that?" And she's like, "No." He's like, "Oh, ha, ha, ha." And she goes to the store, and she tries to buy something else, and they decline her card, and she's like, "Do you know how much money I actually have? I have like this." And so she's like vicariously living through him with this manic shit, because he's like on cloud 10, and she's like trying to be there with him. And this is what it's like dating someone who's bipolar. So she wakes up the next day, and he is like on the ground, like doesn't want to get out of bed, can't function. And she's just like, "Are you all right?" And he's like, "No, I don't like how this shirt fits on me. I can't find the shirt I need to wear today." She's just like, "What the fuck?" I'm out of here. Like, I'm done with this shit. So she has no patience for the mental illness at all. Libra. And he's just like a mess. So she leaves him like that. Anyway, that's all I can really say about that episode without quoting it verbatim or putting a link here. I will try to. Anyway, watch it. It's awesome. It's funny. It's just one of my favorite episodes. Okay, so another one is when Sarah, Ruth's sister, she has a strained relationship with her. They have a very strained relationship. And Ruth goes to visit her. Well, she goes to visit her sister, who opens the door but Kathy Bates. I forget what her name is on the show, but she's, her sister's best friend or something. It's a good name, too. I wish I could remember it. But anyway, I'm not going to try to research and all that. This video is already long enough. So she opens the door. It's Kathy Bates, and she's like, "Yeah, I'm so glad you're here. Your sister just puked, and you can go clean it up." It's just like, what? So Ruth goes in, and her sister's literally chained to the bed. I think she's got belts tying her to the bed like this or something. Kathy Bates has tied her to the bed. And she's like, "Ah," screaming and everything. And she's like, "Yeah, your sister, she tried to refill her prescription for Vicodin, and her 25th prescription for Vicodin, and they told her no. And she, she's already been to rehab and blah, blah, blah." So her sister's addicted to Vicodin. And she's trying to help her detox. And the sister's like literally screaming her head off and, whatever. So Kathy Bates is just, comedy relief. And she like hands the mop to Ruth and everything, like, "Here, you can clean up after. I need a break. I'm done with this." And, you know, they go back and forth, and she starts yelling at the sister, and the sister's like, shut up, you know, get out of my face, I don't care, just give it to me, oh, you know, I don't care if I die, you know, whatever. And Ruth's like, oh, shut up, you know, whatever. And she closes the door, and they both close the door on her, and Kathy Bates lights up a cigarette or something. And then later it shows them outside, and they're just like laying on a hammock, and they're just chilling, you know, talking. And she's like, yeah, you know, I remember I was like this when I was coming off of alcohol or something. Kathy Bates is saying something about an experience she had before, or, you know, the sister's been down this road before, she'll be all right, something like that. I don't know, they're having like talk about it. And then Ruth's like, yeah, you know, okay, you know, they're going back and forth talking. And then Kathy Bates goes, yeah, here you go, you want one of these? And Ruth's like, what is this? And she's like, and Kathy Bates goes, Vicodin. And she's like, I'm not gonna take this, look at my sister's just sitting there, you know, dying off of this. And she's like, oh, it's not gonna hurt, we'll just take a half. It's just, I just love it. I just love it because, you know, it's like life. You can do things in moderation, and if you can't handle it, your body will let you know, and that's when you need to work it out. You know what I mean? But like, if you sit there and say Vicodin is bad, or, you know, Xanax is bad, or weed is bad, or, you know, any of these things are bad, alcohol is bad, it's to each his own. Everybody has their own vice, and everybody has their own way to handle a vice. And if you can't handle it, your body will let you know, and that's when you need to seek help. So, anyway, these little morsels of life, aspects of life, just fascinate me and amuse me, and I just really adore the show. And those are just a few of the moments that I truly, I mean, I think about the show probably on a weekly basis. I always refer to it. It's just so all-encompassing. There's just so much about it that I resonate with, and I take so much from it, and it really has made an impact on me in my life in a very impactful way. And I hope that maybe if you've watched any of this video, you might find interest in it, and if you do, let me know. Share your thoughts, please. Watch some other of my videos if you don't mind me going on all kinds of different subjects back and forth and losing my train of thought. Or at least subscribe or like a few of them. But I take a lot of nature videos and pictures of nature, videos of animals and stuff, so it's kind of random. My channel is very random, so hopefully you can find something that interests you. If not, that's cool. But I definitely wanted to put this video together, and thank you if you have watched. Thank you for putting up with me. I don't know. It's like we hung out. Hopefully you're my friend now. And everybody can use a friend or two. Be kind to others, and most importantly, be kind to yourself. Bye for now.